July 5th, 2017, I found myself on a one-way plane ticket with one bag packed, going from flat land and salty beaches to mountains and winter, snow. The only thing I had lined up was a place to stay and a job interview the day after I landed. The place I was staying at was about an hour away from the area in which I wanted to get established in. So here I was on this one-way plane ticket, getting picked up by my best friend's mom, which is a second mom to me, having not a clue what's in store. I ended up going to that job interview the next day, and I got hired. I started that Monday, and I think that interview was on a Friday. And then the next day, I got a car. I bought a used car, a Subaru. I was always told, get a Subaru, get a Subaru, get a Subaru, with the terrain and everything. I had me a Volkswagen Passat before I moved up here. And it was automatic, or I'm sorry, it was manual. And the stick shift was going out. So I ended up selling that, and that worked out because going from flatland to terrain and a stick shift, I didn't feel confident, that's for sure. And lo and behold, the first week or two, I ended up getting me a ticket first thing in the morning, going to that job, coming down the mountain where it went from 65 to 55, and you had a cop over here in a truck runoff. And so he caught me doing 65, 70, 70 probably. Sitting in a truck runoff, how is that even legal? But culture shock, let's just say it was a real thing. Now, when I had left Florida, I had a dog that I had for 5-6 years that I left with my parents, and then I had a dog that I planned on adopting from the rescue I worked at the moment I got my housing situation settled up here, because where I was staying, I wasn't able to bring my animals. Now, within the first month or two, I ended up meeting this guy, and then this guy introduced me to this group. But I think it was either 2 or almost 3 months after I moved up here, Hurricane Irma was supposed to be a direct hit to my hometown as a Category 5 hurricane. Now, I don't know if it was mama bear instincts or if it was knowing where my male dog was. It wasn't the best setup giving a Category 5 hurricane. There was a lot of things at play that triggered me to go down south and get my dogs 30 hours in 3 days, and then not knowing if we're going to have a roof underneath our heads together or over our heads together, because I worked at that animal hospital. That was the first job I got, the job interview that I ended up getting the day after I landed. And so worst case scenario, my thought process was, okay, I can just board them if need be and figure it out. So I make this long journey going down south while everybody's trying to, not everybody, but a lot of people are trying to get out of the state. And after I make this journey, I get back up here in the mountains and I check into a hotel room. Within the hour of me checking into this hotel room, luckily, the whole hurricane thing, it made it a lot easier with the animals in a hotel. Because if you've ever tried traveling with an animal when it comes to hotels and whatnot, it's not always the easiest situation in a lot of hotels. But within the first hour of me actually getting in there, trying to get situated and all these things, I get a call from that group that I met from that guy that I told you about within like the first month of me coming up here. And one of them, it's one of the elder guys. He was like, 60s, mid 60s, and single, overweight, not the best health, recliner, just painting a picture for you. And he gave me a call and he said, "Hey, I heard you might be, looking for a place to stay." And I was like, "Well, it's three of us, because it's me plus two dogs now." And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, the thing because he mentioned that he had a spare bedroom. And I said, "Well, I don't plan on leaving the dogs with you because I'm going to take them to work with me, and then I'll board them while I'm working. And if everything works out and the dogs like you and they're comfortable, they'll be there when I'm there." So, but you got to understand that the male dog that I ended up adopting at the rescue I worked at, he was a problem. He was born and raised in a rescue in a jail and for 3 years, and he didn't understand society. He didn't trust humans. He maybe 10% of his life was in some type of foster that he got returned fairly quickly from. So introducing him to any type of human outside of the rescue that didn't already know him was difficult within itself. And just me traveling, and just like within the first couple weeks of me having him, I almost thought he was gonna like bust my window in my car a few times because of how bad he was so reactive. And I mean, it was hands full. But luckily my female helped him a lot. But when it came to introducing him to this gentleman, it was the test of all tests, And me not knowing this guy, but given the circumstances, the timing couldn't have been any better. Like I had no idea what I was going to do past that night at the hotel getting back in the mountains with my dogs as this Category 5 hurricane was supposed to be hitting South Florida. So I was like, all right, let me roll with this. Let me at least see how the dogs react. And so we agreed upon that. And I told him, I said, "Look, just stay in the recliner. I'll have them on a leash. I'll come in and I'll see what they do." And so I did just that. Right when I walked in, the recliner's not that far. And so right when I walked in, after this journey that me and these two dogs just went through, because it took us 2 days of travel just to get back. And then we were in a hotel room for 2 nights. So right when we walked in, they kind of I don't know if the male took after my female, because my female, me and her are just like, the only way to describe it is she's my soul dog. She was my soul dog. I mean, I was very blessed to have my first adult dog to be my dime a dozen. But he kind of fed off of her. And so right when we walked in, they went in, sniffed it, and then they looked over at him, and she, being the amazing dog she was, she just kind of went right over to him, sniffed him, and kind of did what she does and hopped up on him. she knew something that I was still processing and trying to figure out. And then my male, the problem dog, naturally did the same thing behind her. So I get in this house, this single wide. It's a smaller single wide too, because it was just a single gentleman to himself. And I walk in, and within like 10 seconds, 5, 10 seconds, they're smelling, sniffing, turning around, and they jump on him and wagging all over him and licking him. And so I was like, my heart is pounding, because this is the beginning of a whole new world for this male dog that I just had to sign papers for about his bite history, that now it is on me. It is, you know what I mean? Like, they signed him over to me saying, whatever happens is on you now. And so here I was the next day or 2 days later, introducing him to this guy that I might potentially stay with until I can get something established. Because the reason why is because the dogs, and it was closer to where I was trying to establish myself compared to the place that I had lined up to stay when I got off the airplane, my best friend's mom. So we get in and this all happens. And so I'm like, okay, like this might mean something. I mean, if they're comfortable, I'm comfortable, because I had such a connection with my female to where she would let me know if she didn't like somebody, to say the least. And she acted very natural, like, honey, I'm home. And it was such a beautiful experience, because I watched this male dog, you know what I mean, who had just sat here and been so reactive, so trying to protect himself for years, and on edge, and he just kind of, for like a couple minutes, just was like, is this home? You know what I mean? Like, something clicked inside of him too. And it was the most magical experience. Because I had no idea what I was about to get myself into, to say the least. And so seeing that outcome, giving the circumstances, I was like, all right. Now, he actually had a single wide bed in this spare bedroom as well. So here I was with 2 full, medium, large dogs sleeping on a single bed, and it was. I look back on it, it's so interesting how, I will say it now, co-creating with God can really be. Because I didn't understand that I was subconsciously co-creating. I wasn't consciously co-creating. But yet, I was forced into situations where I had to trust my intuition at the time. Because this was the beginning journey of me going into the wilderness and actually building this relationship with my Father, our Father God. So I went on out on this limb and stayed with this guy that I had just met, grown man, like a month prior. But it was beautiful, because I was helping him and he was helping me, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't in the best conditions, and he could offer what assisted me. And giving somebody a roof over their head to where they can sleep with their kids, to say the least, my 4-legged fur babies, and not having not one night without them, not having to board them, like, my thought process was going down to Florida when I was hauling butt down there to go get them before this hurricane hit. I mean, but let me continue. So there was a double wide next to this man's house. There was 3 trailers that were within this proximity. I mean, that was like the only neighbors right there. And so the double wide was in the middle of the 3 trailers. And it had been abandoned for a while. And the guy that I was staying with would mention, I wish I can get that from him. I wish I can buy it. I wonder if he would sell it. All the things. And then one day I just said to him, I said, I wonder if he'll rent it out to me. And not much was really said, after that. I just said to him, hey, if you run into him, if you see him, because he didn't see him and he didn't have his phone number or anything like that, and he hadn't been around, and I told him, I said, see if he wants to rent it out or whatever. But in the midst of all of this, I ended up finding our own place, an apartment, and I got moved in there, got my furniture from Florida, moved up, like my bedroom furniture, that's about all I had. And, all my other personal items and whatnot. The rest of my things that didn't fit into that bag, that one carry-on. I just find it crazy that I just packed a carry-on, like a suitcase, and off I went. But I ended up getting this apartment. And before you know it, the gentleman that I, stayed with, he contacts me and mentions that he ran into the guy of the double wide. And he said that he wants to sell it. But there was circumstances that he wanted. So I said, okay. Now, at this time, I wasn't able to buy the house under the circumstances. For one, I couldn't give what he was wanting. For 2, I didn't have the work history. For 3, I was still working on my credit because I had messed it up over one single card when I was like freshly 18, 19 years old. Thanks to, I'm not even going to say thanks to, so I had to make a phone call. And I made a phone call. Now, I told this person the circumstances. But it was a deal that couldn't be passed up. Now, it was going to stay in this person's name until I can buy it from this person. Which did happen like a year later. But I did do it with my ex-fiance at the time, so it wasn't just me. I just want to make that known. But I told this person, like, look, this is a deal you cannot pass up. You can turn around, invest in it if I do you dirty, or if I can't meet my end of the bargain, because my end of the bargain was paying the monthly bill. You know what I mean? I couldn't do it outright at that time, and so I would pay this person monthly until I could take it over completely. But it was an investment to where if I couldn't make my end of the bargain, this person could turn around and sell it and profit off of it and blase. Because, I mean, it was a deal. That's all I'm going to say is, like, it was a deal to where if you could give this man that owned the double wide what he was wanting, it was kind of silly not to do it. if you could afford it, because it was a good investment. So this is all happening. And before you know it, I'm breaking a lease at this apartment within like 6 months and moving into this double wide. And it was such an experience itself because, I mean, I was by myself for like the first year or something in this double wide, you know, prior to the relationship that I ended up in, that we eventually went in on the house together. But the house sat for a couple years, so the AC unit, like outside, the actual AC unit was not good, so that had to be replaced. And then there eventually was a clog in the septic line, which was backing up. Had to get that snaked out, and that was an adventure within itself. And then it was like a spider effect when it came to the plumbing underneath the motorhome, or underneath the double wide manufactured home. So needless to say, that first year was like the most interesting, going through winter, you know, because I was so fresh to all of this stuff, letting pipes leak or drip, and it was an experience from A to Z, whole entire learning curve. But I want to say all this to say, had I not met that man that introduced me to that group, I never would have ended up in this double wide. Had I not met that man that introduced me to this group, I never would have had a place to stay with my two dogs together. Because when I went down to Florida because of that hurricane, I had no envision past getting them in my possession and then figuring it out. And worst case scenario, leaving them overnight in a kennel at the veterinarian office that I worked at in the boarding facility. Within the first 48 hours of me moving up here, I got the job at a veterinarian hospital. If I did not get that job, I would have never had the opportunity to bring those dogs with me to work every single day, so they were not so they were not left at this man's house for him to take responsibility for when I'm not there. You see how everything worked out? But it all worked out because that's how God works. God works in the most mysterious ways that are beyond our understanding, especially if you're not learning from everything and trying your best and tapping into your intuition and knowing you're doing certain things because it's the right thing to do, and then having faith behind it. Because the faith is what got me in the situations that helped me. It was miracles that were popping up because I took the initiative to change my life when I got on that one-way plane ticket. And within the first 2 to 3 months, everything lined up for the next couple years following that. And I say that because I ended up in that double wide, and I stayed in that double wide, that manufactured home, for a couple years. It was like 2-3 years. And I sit here, 7 years later, this being my 7th winter, I remember running over to my neighbor's house because my pipes were frozen because this Florida chick didn't understand, didn't know how to operate in the winter. And the fact that I had this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house within the first year of me moving up here was nothing I could have mapped out, lined up, blueprinted myself. I just knew that I had this knowing that I needed to get on this plane ticket, and I had a window of opportunity to do it. And I just knew that I had to leave the environment in which I was in. That man that I lived next to as well, he helped me find an AC guy. He helped me. The guy who installed the septic just lived right up the road. We couldn't even find the tap or the lid, whatever you want to say, with the other dude. But then the guy I lived with, the guy I live next door now to, helped us reach out to the other dude who installed it. He came and he helped us find it within 10 minutes after we were looking for an hour. Same, the guy that I lived next to, that guy that I lived with, he helped me find a gentleman to help me when it came to the plumbing that was spidering underneath. I was learning and trying to do what I could do, but that man that I met within the first month of me living up here, coming up here, that introduced me to this group, getting introduced to this group helped me in more than one ways than multiple ways, in multiple different ways, areas, subjects. From car troubles to getting the housing situation figured out to taking a shower because my pipes are frozen. I had to get appliances as well for this house. And I sit here all these years later, now understanding how much I've been co-creating with the Most High, with the universe. It's nothing about fearing God. When I moved up here, I didn't know anybody or anything in the area in which I was trying to reside in, an hour away from my best friend. And somehow, I just ended up in a double wide within the first, I think it was had to be 6 months, maybe 8 months. Ended up in a double wide next to the man that opened his house up to me and my dogs. Tell me how that's not God working. Because I had no idea what I was getting myself into at 24 years old, getting on a one-way plane ticket. I just had an inner knowing that my path was not a good path I was on. And that window of opportunity was better than what I was doing. So I just took a huge leap of faith. And when I tell you if I can go back to, the feelings, the stress, the anxiety, all the things at the time, it was beyond. I'm literally building something from nothing. I didn't know nobody. I just was on a mission to figure it out, to find myself. And I'm in my 7th winter. And before I got on that one-way plane ticket, one of my family members said to me, "You'll be back in 6 months. You'll miss the water too much." And here I am, surrounded by water, living right next to a creek. I went from the valley where that double wide was, beautiful view of the mountains, sunrises, sunsets, double rainbows. It was in front of the national forest. I was in the valley with a beautiful view of the mountains. And here I am. Now I'm in the mountains, living next to this creek, and I'm surrounded by water. And I just can't help but think, what an experience this has been. And it all started with a leap of faith. And basically starting my journey of crying out to God about everything in my life that was going on. And to sum it up, getting on that one-way plane ticket was literally a one-way plane ticket into the wilderness. But yet, God was right there at play the whole time, whether I knew it or not. Because I didn't understand it like I do now. I didn't see it like I do now. That's why I say co-creating with our Father is what it's all about. Miracles, blessings, all that stuff does happen. But you're also consciously, subconsciously a part of it. I just have consciously become more aware than subconsciously because I was working out of a subconscious mind, I believe, more than anything. When the enemy has so much control over you because of your pain and your suffering and your traumas, it's quite difficult to see any type of light. But there was a small glimpse of it for me. And that was the one-way plane ticket that I booked for the first time ever doing anything for myself, not listening to what anybody else has to say about my own life and what I'm supposed to be doing because of what society says. And I had no idea what was coming after that. But all I do know is I really just can't help but thank my Father God. I was so lost and confused and in so much pain and hatred and anger and animosity. I knew that one-way plane ticket was almost like life or death. Because if you stay on the path you're going down, there ain't no telling what's about to happen. But if you take this leap of faith and this window of opportunity that I have blessed you with, if you utilize this blessing the way I'm trying to guide you, that's life. And I had no idea at the time. I just had that knowing that I needed to take advantage of the opportunity that was given to me after I had been dreaming about coming to the mountains for so long. And I had a clear understanding that if I do not do this, it was kind of like you're on your own to a path of destruction. That's why I just don't want people to fear God. There's no reason to. The love He has, what He has done for me, there should be no fear behind it. I am so eternally grateful. And sometimes it's hard for me to just actually sit here and think of what I have accomplished. And just talking about the first year of me being up here, starting this whole new life, creating something from nothing. It's incredible how much God worked in such a mysterious way in that first year, when I knew nothing that was in store for me. And sometimes I really just can't even believe it myself. Because this is 7 years later. So it's like a whole different perspective I have on it compared to when I was going through it, a year after I was going through it, 3 years after, because this is just the first year I'm talking about. And God's hand has been on it up into this day, up into this breath. But I'm going to leave this one at that. Peace and love, y'all.